financial markets and financial products. A very warm welcome to all of you. Great to see you guys on a day-to-day basis, to be able to connect and to be able to talk so many things that we talk about. Today we are going to, before we proceed, I'm going to share my referral link in the chat box here, and then you have my referral code too. My referral code is EAWQA. EAWQA. I repeat, EAWQA. So use this to basically register yourself on the platform. Today has been a significant day for all of us, given that Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of them seems to be like going like really crazy in terms of performance, the way they are performing. So most of them are on the positive side. As you can see, Bitcoin has again come back to 111 just now. About a couple of hours, like I think 1 hour only ago, I was seeing that Bitcoin was at 111 also. So that's good news. We can see the volume has also gone up. It's a 3-digit figure, 102.9 billion. Ethereum is also 2658. Just about 1 hour ago, it was also at 2700 something. BNB at 662, Solana at 154, XRP at 2.38. So all of them are like positive. Bitcoin is positive by 0.76, Ethereum positive by 3.64%, BNB positive by 0.64, Solana positive by 2.74, XRP 4.14%. So what has impacted the markets in 24 hours, that actually we can see that the prices are shooting like crazy at the moment. In fact, SUI has also surged till 3.21, which is a great move for SUI. It reached 3.25 also. So some great movements on each and every crypto out there. So what's impacting the crypto markets at the moment? Crypto markets are rallying today, and here's why there is a fueling surge. Bitcoin recently surged to a new all-time high just under 112k before stabilizing near 111k. So this price breakout triggered massive short liquidations up to 340 million, fueling further momentum. There is massive ETF inflows. Today US spot BTF inflows total around 218 million, while ETFs saw about 211 million. That's a major spike that's seen around BTC and ETH. That's why probably we can see BTC and ETH doing really well. Over the past week, spot ETFs have garnered 7 billion, adding deep liquidity and positive sentiment. So spot BTFs have also gained garnered around 7 billion. So traditional institutions and corporations continue to pile into crypto, further strengthening Bitcoin's narrative as a reserve asset. So traditional institutions, corporations, they are continuing to pile into crypto. So institution and corporate demands continue to grow. That's the reason we can see that the crypto markets are seeing some great results. Okay. So companies like MicroStrategy, led by Michael Saylor and others, are accumulating Bitcoin, reinforcing bullish expectations. On the macro and cross-market dynamics, a weak US dollar, dovish signals on Federal's possible interest rate cuts, and strength in US equity, especially tech stocks, are creating a favorable environment for crypto. So that's on the dollar and interest rate cut side. Nvidia's record of 4 trillion valuation boost also buoyed risk assets like catalyzing Bitcoin's recent breakout. So on the regulatory aspect of it, the upcoming crypto week is in the US. House and Senate reviewing crypto friendly legislations are injecting hope and fresh capital. So let's just hope by 14th to 18th July we'll see something new hitting on that side. Pro crypto bills like Genius Act and Clarity Act are shaping up a more favorable regulatory framework. So probably we might see them getting implemented by next week. So let's just hope that it continues to grow. So yeah. So market and analyst insights. Slight pullback. BTC has dipped 0.3% in the past 24 hours, hovering around 108 to 109K range. Ongoing US tariff trade wars concerns are capping gains. The sentiment remains steady as upcoming policy events approach. Bullish positioning. Some institutional traders are betting on a breakout up of 110K, targeting moves up to 130K. That is what they are expecting it to go to. And Bitcoin is currently seen as fairly priced relative to historical averages, mere multiple 1.1x. So that's on the market and analyst insights. Now what this means is zero point 0.01 BTC represents a solid 185.02, not 185,085. Reflecting the recent dip from May peak near 112K, it's a meaningful chunk if you're planning purchases, investing or setting alerts. This baseline helps. So it's already at its high. So I don't know if it's still the time to buy or buying opportunity. I totally doubt. A historical price chart or performance over time. We need to check it. Definitely it's at its all-time high and all of that, so it's a bit difficult to say whether this is the right opportunity to buy or not. So we need to watch it out. So guys, overall the crypto market seems to be positive, but there is something which we need to understand, that despite of all the setbacks that it has already led to, the crypto markets are continuing to grow because of the ETF inflows, the institutional adoption that is being seen, whether it's on the spot ETF front, uh, like on the ETH or the BTC side. Whatever it is, it has basically impacted the overall cryptos, and it's continuing to grow. That is what at the moment the sentiments are. So the fear and greed index is neutral. So people are not greedy, people are not fearful at the moment. So it's a neutral sentiment that we have. So so this is our Zbit platform, as you all know. So you can see that Zbit basically um, has everything that you need to know. So on the spot trading side, there are so many currencies that you can look into and start trading into. So on my home page, you can see there is a registration link which you can see, and then it talks about optimal transaction fees, providing you with the best service and competing trading fees, reliable security. Our sophisticated security measures protect your digital assets from all risk. So it does talk about whatever they have to offer. So 24/7 support, round the clock operation mode provides timely problem solving issues. There's a beginner's guide on the platform. So some articles talking about how to trade digital currency assets and how to deposit, withdraw, how to protect asset security and all of that. Then on this corner we have about us, fee structure, privacy policy, disclaimers, user agreements, contact us, apply for listing, anti-money laundering and all of that. So, what do you think about the platform, guys? Do you think the platform is good enough for all the information that on all the information that you need? Do you think it's good enough? So up on the top corner side, this is zbit.com. There is market here, spot, futures, rewards, about us, and then there's a login, there's a sign up here, sign up buttons. So if you want to register yourself with Zbit, you can use the sign up information, or you have my registration link which I have already forwarded in the chat room. So you can use that to register yourself using my link and my registration code. So once you click on the market, you see there are so many spot coins here. It says it's a 32 different coins that we have in the spot markets. Futures has around 72 cryptocurrencies in this. So it's a big number, of course. So if I go to spot, this is how my spot looks like. Guys, sorry for low on energy because I'm not feeling well. So I'm trying to balance myself, but unfortunately, my health is playing a lot today. Mhm. Somehow it doesn't seems to work properly. I don't know. There is something wrong with it. Bitcoin is also doing well, 110. Like I mentioned, what is actually impacting the overall markets today? Sorry, there has been a bit of. Okay. So Bitcoin has already hit its all-time high of 112 today. Looks like it's on the bull run right now. So we can see yesterday we were discussing about how to spot the trend reversals, and that is what. Oh my god, look at this candle, man. Wow. So it kind of jumped from 109 till all-time high of 112. That's a 1 hour candle that has formed. So if the buying pressure continues to build up, then we might as well see that the prices will continue to soar high. As of now, it seems like the price definitely on this level has broken the resistance level that it was trading at. So while assessing moving averages, it's important that we see the 50-day moving averages to be able to determine if the price is going to reverse or not. So on a moving average, indicator, a 50-day period with 1 or 2 days being differentiated, like if the price either is above moving average for 2 days out of the 50-day moving average, then the price will continue to change its direction altogether. So what we need to understand is that moving averages, like we need to assess it for 50 days, and if the price sees any kind of change in the 50 days period, whether it's seeing prices down by whatever you say, prices down by moving averages, then it is basically going to see a downward trend. And if it sees price is above the moving average, we might as well expect that it will see an upward trend. So that is how it works. So you see 50-day moving average has been ranging here only. Now it's suddenly seeing a surge here. So here we can see clearly that the moving averages, it was like for the 50 days moving average, the price was always above. So there's an uptrend that is continuing to happen. So if in case you see that the moving average somehow has surpassed the prices, which means it has gone below the price level, then there is a possibility that the price will see a downtrend. So here in this case it was clear the trend is continuously continuing, so the price continued to surge. That is how, at the moment we can still say there is no reversal at the moment that we can, find out.
So this particular criteria that we're talking about, we need to look out for 1 or 2 days trend reversal that can bring about the changes that we are referring to. Okay, so from this scenario, support and resistance is very clear. We know that the resistance has been broken. That is very much clear. So these are few things that you need to know. Most of the cases, these are your only ways of finding out if the reversal is coming. So support and resistance breaks, then the trend reversal is likely to happen. And the volume spike, as I was telling you, that volume spike, it continues to the volume continues to grow. Like if you see that the red volume, which is the sell that is happening, followed by the price falling down, may indicate that the reversal is likely to happen. So you see on the volume indicator, the red volume is continuing to grow, and the prices are continuing to fall. And double top, we've seen an example here itself. The double top forms and then it goes down. And RSI, we know that RSI goes down overbought or oversold territory, less than 30 or more than 70, and on different time frames. Then we decide whether the reversal is likely to happen. MACD, we know MACD, if it crosses the signal line or if it goes below signal line, then the bullish or the bearish territory, it moves to that, and then we know that the reversal is likely to happen. And Fibonacci, we know that if it is not retracing from 78.6 level, or if it is not retracing from say 61.8 level, then
likely the trend is going to reverse from there. So if it was an uptrend, a downward trend will happen and vice versa. So that's how it is. So guys, I'm feeling a bit of unwell today. Let me play some videos. Probably today seems to be a very bad day. Anybody in the live chat would like to ask me any question or talk to me, you can. As today seems to be a very, very bad day for me. I'm not well at all. So as you can see, I'm very low on energy too, so that's why I'm not able to keep up with the normal this thing.
Data, that's what you would say, but that's not. We have to be forward-looking, and the thing that every forecaster, every outside forecaster, and the Fed is saying is that we expect a meaningful amount of inflation to arrive in coming months, and we have to take that into account. So I think a backward-looking look would lead you to a neutral stance, but we can't. We have to look at that, and because the economy is still solid, we can take the time to actually see what's going to happen. There's a range of possibilities on how large the inflation effects and the other effects are going to be. So we'll make smarter and better decisions if we just wait a couple of months or however long it takes to get a sense of really what is going to be the pass-through of inflation and what's going to be the effects on spending and on hiring and all those things.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio and Television. Your friend down at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue continues to lob insults in your direction, and I'm wondering, given now that the Supreme Court has maybe carved out the Fed from some of the legal implications of that, whether this is just noise that the markets and everybody should ignore until your term is up, or whether you worry that it could lead to more pressure on confidence on Wall Street, on consumers, about the outlook for the economy.
Okay. From my standpoint, it's not complicated. What everyone on the FOMC wants is a good, solid American economy with strong labor market and price stability. That's what we want. We think our policy is well positioned right now to deliver that and to be able to respond in a timely way as the data lead us around. The economy's been resilient, and part of that is our stance. And again, we think we're in a good place on that to respond to significant economic developments. That's what matters. That is what matters to us. Pretty much that's all that matters to us.
I need to ask, assuming you are not reappointed, would you stay on as governor when your term as chair ends?
I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about this.
Andrew.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I guess with workplace raids picking up significantly, what kind of effect would that have on the labor market?
Sorry, with what picking up?
Workplace raids.
So you're asking immigration?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to speculate. One way to get at that from an economic standpoint, we of course don't comment on immigration policy. It's not ours to make or comment on. But what you see is an unemployment rate that has been really solid and at a low level, not really increasing. It's been in a good range and well within the range of mainstream estimates of maximum employment. And that means, part of that is that labor demand and labor supply are kind of moving down at the same rate. Labor demand is softening. You see that in job creation, but it's still kind of at a healthy level. And labor supply is diminishing because the immigration numbers that we see are much lower than they were. So those two factors, supply and demand, that's what has kept the unemployment rate in a reasonably stable place.
Okay, thanks. The other thing I wanted to follow up on is if you could elaborate on the potential changes to the SEP that you suggested were part of the framework review, I think.
So the framework review really has two tracks, right? The first track is our policy framework that is reflected in the consensus statement. And we've said that we would finish that and announce it by the end of the summer. So we're well along in that process. We've had the meetings that we need to have, and we're now going to be going into, into discussions about, specific changes to language. So that's the framework part of it. The second part of it is our communications tools and practices. And that part comes next. Okay, that's what we're going to do in the meetings this fall. Actually, what we did at this meeting, though, is we sort of prepared the ground for that. We had a meeting where we talked at a high level about a number of ideas. The SEP is part of it. Many other ideas. It's sort of how do we think our communications can be improved? There are a number of ideas. People offered a really, it was a great conversation. Number of ideas, but we're going to look at those with staff briefing and a lot of thought in the fall. And I would say when it comes to changing communications, I would only support things really only implement things that have very broad support. And also you want to be really careful because I think our communications are pretty well received. They're not broken. So more is not necessarily better, but better is better. So we're going to be looking at ways to do things that will improve the clarity of what we do for the benefit of the public.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Kelly O'Grady, CBS News. You're famously known as the guy that makes decision based on data instead of speculation. You said today the inflation data is in a good place. We don't know how tariffs are going to impact prices going forward. That's uncertain. But I've got to go back to the last time that you cut rates in December, and there was still the what if of tariffs. So what made you feel comfortable cutting then when inflation was higher than where it is today, and you didn't cut today?
Well, the forecast for inflation in December was 2.5%. Core PCE for 2025, the forecast was 2.5%, which was a good inflation forecast. I think what we've learned is that, and this was long before we had any idea of what the actual policies would be, we've learned that tariffs are going to be substantially larger than forecasters generally thought. And, our forecasts are generally not particularly different from those of other, well-resourced forecasting operations. So what we learned, and particularly in April, was that very substantially larger tariffs were coming and that would mean higher inflation. That's what happened. And so you saw 2.5% forecast in December, you saw 2.8% in March, and you see 3.1% now. So it's 0.6 higher inflation for 2025, and that's a big part of the change, and that's due to the effects of the tariffs that are, we don't know where they're going to land, but it's pretty apparent they're going to land higher than outside forecasters were really guessing at the end of last year.
My follow-up to that, I think consumers, right, we're looking for relief on rates when it comes to mortgages, car loans. Small businesses want to take out more manageable loans. When you look at the cumulative inflation over the past 5 years, prices have risen over 20%. It's been a rough road. So what is the tipping point then for the wait and see approach in terms of how much it's going to help versus when it hurts the American consumer?
Well, we're trying to restore price. The best thing we can do for the public that we serve is restore price stability. If we can, and we will, restore price stability, meaning 2% inflation on a durable, sustainable basis. That, and also maximum employment. If we restore those things, that's the best thing, and that is our goal. The best thing we can do for the American people, for households and businesses, that is the ultimate thing that we can deliver. And they can make their decisions without having to think about inflation all the time. So in the meantime, we have to keep rates high to get inflation all the way down. They're not very high, let's be honest. I would say policy is modestly or moderately, probably modestly now restrictive. If you look at the economy, it's not performing as though it were performing under very strict monetary policy, very restrictive monetary policy. So I would say probably modestly restrictive. And so what it will take is confidence that inflation is coming down. Now, I would say without tariffs, that confidence would be building, because if you see what's happening with non-housing services and housing services, which are the other two big pieces other than goods, those are coming down really nicely now. So I think we have to learn a little more about tariffs. I don't know what the right way for us to react will be. I think it's hard to know with any confidence how we should react until we see really the size of the effects, and then we can start to make a better judgment. So that's what we're doing, and I think we can take the time to do that because unemployment is 4.2%. Wages are moving up. Real wages are moving up at a healthy clip now, and inflation is 2.3% headline inflation over a 12-month basis. So it's a good economy and a solid economy with decent growth.
Thank you, Chair Powell. So you're saying that uncertainty has come down, the economy is moving at a solid pace, inflation has come down over the past 3 months, and this is all moving in the right direction. So are you indicating here that Americans should expect some sort of economic pain in the second half of the year?
I'm not saying that at all. From our standpoint, what I can say is that the U.S. economy is in solid shape. Inflation has come down. The unemployment rate remains at 4.2%. As I mentioned, real wages are moving up. It's a good job creation is at a healthy level. Unemployment, again, as I said, low. Labor force participation in a good place. So, and what we're waiting for to reduce rates is to understand what will happen with really the tariff inflation. And there's a lot of uncertainty about that. Every forecaster you can name who is a professional forecaster with adequate resources and forecasts for a living is forecasting pretty significant. Everyone that I know is forecasting a meaningful increase in inflation in coming months from tariffs, because someone has to pay for the tariffs, and it will be someone. Buying it, and all through that chain, people will be trying not to be the ones who pick up the cost, but ultimately the cost of the tariff has to be paid, and some of it will fall on the end consumer. We know that because that's what businesses say, that's what the data say from past. So we know that's coming, and we just want to see a little bit of that before we make judgments prematurely.
And follow up on that, so you spent years there talking about how you're data dependent, and be a little more direct on this. Now you're making decisions looking forward. Doesn't the data you're seeing today indicate there should be a rate cut?
No,
This seems to be a bit of old.
Monetary policy has to be forward-looking. That is elementary. You've got to be looking. I always talk about the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. We say that over and over and over again, right? So it's always forward-looking. If at the very beginning of the pandemic, we cut rates to zero immediately. Nothing had happened. We just knew that it was going to be really bad, right? So we took very aggressive forward-looking because we knew things were going to be unusually difficult. So, of course, this is something we sort of know is coming. We just don't know the size of it. And again, the economy seems to be in solid shape. So the labor market's not crying out for a rate cut. Businesses, were in a bit of shock after April 2, but you see business sentiment, you talk to business people now, there's a very different feeling now that people are working their way through this, and they understand how they're going to go, and it feels much more positive and constructive than it did 3 months ago, let's say. So, again, we think that our current stance of monetary policy is in a good place.
Amara.
Thank you. Amara Mokley with Bloomberg. Chair Powell, in February, you told Congress that the Fed is, quote, overworked, maybe not overstaffed. Then in a memo to staff in May announcing a deferred resignation program at the Fed, you said you wanted to ensure that the Fed was, quote, right-sized. Those two statements appear to be at odds with one another. Could you explain what changed in the roughly 3 months between those statements that made you decide that staff levels at the Fed should decline?
I don't see them at all as intention. So I was asked, is the Fed overstaffed? And I said no. And I sort of said as a pun, overworked but not overstaffed. People do work extremely hard at the Fed, and I know they work hard at Bloomberg too. So, but we work hard. But I would say this. So we are careful stewards of public resources, and sometimes you need to show that. So there have been several times in our history, modern history, where the Fed has said, you know what, we're going to do a buyout. We're going to show the public, we're going to demonstrate that we are good stewards of public resources. So we thought, and I thought, that this is a time when we can, we grow at about, our headcount has grown at about 1% a year. So over the course of a couple of years, we're doing a careful scrub of the board and all the reserve banks, and we're going to find 10% of employees who can do something else, where we can streamline our operations, and we think we can get there in a couple of years. We think we can do that, and we think this is without taking risk to carrying out our critical missions. So this is something you do very carefully, thoughtfully, and you do it again respecting that we have critical missions to carry out. I've had a lot of experience in my prior careers, with headcount reductions and things like that, and this is how you do it professionally. You do it carefully, thoughtfully, with a lot of planning, and you do it over a period of time. I think the Fed will be fine. I think no one will notice any decline in our ability to carry out our missions, and I think it's just us wanting to demonstrate to the public that we are actually good stewards of their resources. We're effectively wiping out 10 years of headcount growth with this. So, we wanted to show that, that we're good stewards.
How is progress on reducing headcount going so far? Are you on track to meet the goal?
We're just at the very beginning. As you know, we're doing a buyout program. We're gonna hit that goal. I think many organizations find that they can do this. You don't want to do it every year or anything, but you can do it at intervals, and you wind up not interfering with your ability to perform your jobs.
Chair Powell, Claire Jones from the Financial Times. As you're no doubt aware, the Senate Finance Committee has tabled its version of the reconciliation bill this week, and I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the tenor of the debate at the FOMC over the past few days on fiscal policy and the degree to which that influenced people's projections for 2026 and beyond. Thank you.
Yeah, so we don't sit around and debate or really discuss. We take fiscal policy as fully exogenous, and so we actually really didn't talk about the bill or the contents of it. It's still evolving. When it gets closer, remember also we have a very, very large economy, and that the effects will be at the margin, I expect that they may already be in, but they will be in by the next meeting. We'll make an estimate, but it's not a major thing. It's nothing that we discuss. It may have been mentioned a couple of times, but as something that's coming in. But I think the outcome is, we don't know the outcome yet there, so hard to be real specific.
Neil. Thanks, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin with Axios. There have been some cutbacks in economic statistics collection in the last few weeks, and worries that long-running problems around funding and response rates may be getting worse. How much is this concern on your radar? How much confidence do you have that the gauges you're watching to assess the economy are reliable right now?
Two things. One, the data we get right now, we can do our jobs. I'm not concerned that we can't do our jobs. That's not the point. The point really is that we are starting to see layoffs and important gatherers of data are saying that they're having to cut back on the size of their surveys. That's going to lead to more volatility in the surveys. I think we should take a step back and, from our standpoint, and I think the standpoint of businesses and governments and everyone, having really good data on the state of the economy at any given time is a huge public good. It helps, it not just doesn't help the Fed, it helps the government, it helps Congress, it helps the executive branch. More importantly, really, it helps businesses. They need to know what's going on in the economy. The United States has been a leader for many, many years in this whole project of measuring and understanding what's happening in our very large and dynamic economy. And I hate to see us cutting back on that, because it is a real benefit to the general public that people in all kinds of jobs have the best possible understanding of what's happening in the economy and hence what's likely to happen. It's very hard to measure what's going on in the U.S. economy. If you read, there was a book called, it's really remarkable how many things you need to understand to estimate U.S. GDP. Very, very difficult, and it's so important that we get it right. I just would say it's not a place to. I would want to keep investing in that, for the good of the general public.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. So you're conducting this monetary policy strategy framework review, but next year we're supposed to have a new Fed chair, and I'm wondering if that affects at all the way that you're approaching this. How do you ensure that this framework will actually be durable?
The framework document goes back to 2012, and it's the committee's document. It's not like we're going to invent a brand new way to do things. It's been an evolving document, so it shouldn't depend on who the chair is at all. It should depend on what's happening in the economy and what the committee wants to do. So, yeah, it isn't really tied to any particular chair. And we used to renew it every year. Now we do it every 5 years. So, but I don't think I've never heard anyone raise this issue that a new chair might want to come in and go in a completely different direction. I really don't think that's right. But that's not going to be up to me to decide.
Is that affecting at all who you're consulting with?
Not at all. Not in any way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chair Powell, Matt Egan from CNN. Relatively low gas prices this year have helped drive down inflation in recent reports, but that trend is starting to reverse given the crisis in the Middle East. How are you thinking about how the Israel-Iran conflict will impact the economy, especially inflation, and what lessons were learned during the 2022 period when another conflict, the Russia-Ukraine war, sent oil and gas prices skyrocketing?
So, of course, we're watching, like everybody else is, what's going on. I really don't have any comment on that. Possible that we'll see higher energy prices. What's tended to happen is when there's turmoil in the Middle East, you may see a spike in energy prices, but it tends to come down. Those things don't generally tend to have lasting effects on inflation, although, of course, in the 1970s, they famously did, because you had a series of very, very large shocks. But we haven't seen anything like that now. The U.S. economy is far less dependent on foreign oil than it was back in the 1970s. So, but there.
A quick follow-up. I've just got to ask you about artificial intelligence. Some technology executives have recently been warning that AI could wipe out a large chunk of entry-level jobs and significantly increase the unemployment rate. I'm wondering how concerned you are, if at all, about the threat that AI poses to employment.
So this is the question. The question really is, will AI be more augmenting labor or replacing labor? And I wouldn't, we all see those announcements, including one today. I wouldn't, overread a couple of data points, because, AI should be creating jobs at the same time. It may be replacing, maybe doing both. Anyone who's done any work with AI will have been a little bit stunned at how capable it is. And it's just a different thing. So I think this is something that certainly has transformational potential. And probably we're in the very early stages of it. They say what you're seeing now compared to what you'll see in 2 years is going to be very different and even more effective. So I think it's really hard to know. Of course, there are optimists who feel like it's going to make everybody much more.
It's nice to see how money works in so many ways with XTB, because XTB offers a wide range of investment opportunities.
Spectrum, white collar, blue collar, and everything. So I just don't know. We don't have a house view on that, but this is going to be a very important question for some time.
Greg.
Thank you. Greg Rapp from MarketWatch. I was wondering if you could step back a little bit, Chair Powell. There's a spate of articles and a lot of op-eds now in the newspapers saying that the U.S. economy and the global economy is going through this profound change, akin to the end of the Bretton Woods era in the 1970s. And don't you owe the American people like some sort of like explanation for what we're going through? I mean, I noticed earlier this month when you talked about Bretton Woods a little bit, and you said that Bretton Woods, the Fed staff had to like change how the dollar, movements of the dollar was impacting the economy. Are we going through something like that now? That, you know, are you having to change how you do monetary policy? Is it that fundamental a change underway? Thanks.
It's certainly a time of real change. You know, from a geopolitical standpoint, from a trade standpoint, from an immigration standpoint, you see this not just here but everywhere. So there's quite a lot going on. It doesn't change the way we do monetary policy in the near term. I mean, but and it doesn't change our objectives or what we need to do. And you know, these things are not really our issues. They're really issues for elected governments. All of those issues are really for elected governments. But there's no question it's a time of real change, and very hard to see where that goes. You know, will it be? There have been many things written about how it's going to be a more inflationary time. That's possible. It's not guaranteed. You know, AI could cut in the very other direction. AI could make people much more productive and push in the other direction. I don't know though. So both housing services and non-housing services have really been grinding down toward levels that are consistent with 2% inflation. So that's the good news. We've had goods inflation just moving up a bit, and of course we expect, as you point out, we do expect to see more of that over the course of the summer. It takes some time for tariffs to work their way through the chain of distribution to the end consumer. A good example of that would be goods being sold at retailers today may have been imported several months ago before tariffs were imposed. So we're beginning to see some effects, and we do expect to see more of them over coming months. We do also see price increases in some of the relevant categories like personal computers and audiovisual equipment and things like that are attributable to tariff increases. In addition, we look at surveys of businesses, and there are many of those, and you do see a range of things, but many companies do expect to put all or some or all of the effect of tariffs through to the next person in the chain, and ultimately to the consumer. Today, you know, the amount of the tariff effects, the size of the tariff effects, their duration and the time it will take are all highly uncertain. So that is why we think the appropriate thing to do is to hold where we are as we learn more. And we think our policy stance is in a good place where we're well positioned to react to incoming developments.
So in terms of how we should interpret the rate cuts penciled into the SEP, is this reflecting that there's this expectation that underlying inflation will just stay well enough contained that allows the committee to eventually move ahead with those cuts? Or is it about, you know, responding to a deterioration in economic activity, let's say? I mean, how should we make sense of the forecast?
So if you look at the forecast, you will see that people do generally expect inflation to move up and then to come back down. But we can't just assume that. Of course, we don't know that. And, you know, our job is to make sure, one of our jobs is to make sure that a one-time increase in inflation doesn't turn into an inflation problem. And that, again, that will depend on the size of the effects, how long it takes for them to come in, and ultimately on keeping inflation expectations anchored.
Hi, and thanks, Chair Powell. Howard Schneider with Reuters. If you look at the rate path starting in December to today and adjust it over the full time horizon you've got there, you've taken about a quarter point per year out of your projected path, and you end at a higher rate at end 2027 than you would have in the prior forecast. Is that a result of a sense that tariffs will lead to more persistent inflation? Is it a result of reassessments of where your short-term neutral rate is? Why are you on a slower path now?
So I would focus most on the nearer term as you get out to the later years. It's hard for anybody to know where the economy is going. You didn't see people moving their longer term, estimate of the neutral rate, for example, at this meeting. So and those things are probably slow moving. So I think if you look at what's happening here since March, this is since March, right? You see a little slower growth, just a tiny tick up, 1/10 tick up in unemployment, and you see inflation moving up 0.3. And by the way, it was a similar move from the the December SEP to the March. So that's what you see. You see the effects of tariffs. I think we learned in April, after the March meeting, that substantially higher tariffs were likely. And then since then, the estimates of where the tariffs will be have actually moved back down, although still at an elevated level. So we're adapting in real time. And what you see is an accumulation of individual assessments.
You say in the statement that risks have diminished, on that front, but the July 9th, drop dead date for all the Liberation Day tariffs is still out there and unresolved. You've got now exchange of missiles between two Middle East adversaries with a possible U.S. involvement. How can you justify saying that risks have diminished?
So what we said was that uncertainty uncertainty about the economic outlook has diminished but remains elevated. Many surveys say that. They do. So, and that's actually a line from the Teal book, which you can see in 5 years.
I think this one is it's an old video, honestly speaking. I thought it's a new one. That's why I was playing it. However, I think I did play this about a couple of days ago, so let's watch it later. Maybe at the moment we don't see anything. So you see 0.7 and it retraced back here. This is what I was talking about. So when it's a uptrend and the price has already hit 0.6 and 0.7 and it retraces back, the trend is likely to continue. But if it was not able to sustain that, then the price is likely to see some kind of downward trend coming its way. So this is what I was referring to. I'm going to add the Fibonacci levels once again. So, as a practice, we would want you guys to trade in the trend's direction and not against it. But whenever you put in money, the possibility is that if you're not watching out for the key levels that you're supposed to watch, then you might end up putting money at the time when basically the trend is likely to change its direction altogether. So these are some key indicators that help us in order to determine if the trend is likely to change. First one is the moving averages. The moving averages basically, you see that this blue line on the screen, the price is above the moving average. Okay, in this case, it clearly indicates it's a uptrend, okay? However, if the moving average changes its direction, the likelihood of trend reversal is possible. So we need to watch out the moving averages for at least 1 to 2 days out of the 50-day period below. Then we can determine if the reversal is likely to happen or not. That is one thing. Now, second thing is support and resistance. As you can see on the screen, I have created a support and resistance, and the price has definitely crossed the resistance level and it's trading above the resistance level, which means the uptrend is continuing. All this while you can say it was in a sideways direction, the market was moving. And now the price has started going up. The third criteria for it is to know if there's a sudden volume spike, which means the red volume on the indicator is continuing to grow, whereas the price on the other side seems to be falling down. That is likelihood of knowing the fact that the reversal is likely to happen now. Fourth is we already saw the double top or the lower highs that it tries to create. So the double top gets created, then the price shoots down. We have seen it in the example here where the price has shooted down on the double top and then again it bounced back. Fourth tool or fourth indication or the signal is RSI. RSI on different time frames, whether it's in more than 70 or less than 30 territory. Is likely to indicate any upcoming trend that is coming. So if you see the price is above 70, then from there the reversal is likely to happen. Or if you see the price was below 30, then again there is a likelihood that the price will reverse. Less than 30 means oversold territory. The price will change its trend altogether. But you cannot determine reversal only on one time frame, so you have to determine reversal on different time frames to be able to say 100% accurately that yes, the reversal will happen. 1 hour, 30 minutes, 3 minutes, 15 minutes, all the time frames have to be analyzed to make sure that it's reached that level. Other than RSI, there is also something called MACD and Fibonacci, and I told you if the price is not able to retrace from 0.6 or 0.7 level, the likelihood of the price reversing is very high. If it retraces, it continues with the trend, but if it doesn't, the reversal is likely to happen. $3.27 to reach SUI. I think it's corresponding to Bitcoin today. Bitcoin has also reached 112 almost, and SUI reached around 3.27 today. So looks like both are in the bull run today. So some good thing happening on that front. Let me just see if there's any news on it. So it seems there's a meeting in Bekasi that is going to happen for SUI between 10 to 2 p.m. UTC. So the agenda includes discussions on Bitcoin's prospective parabolic movement and the timing of the next altcoin season. SUI, as we all know, is a first-tier blockchain designed to address certain challenges associated with Web3. So one of the major innovations offered by SUI is parallel transaction execution. On other platforms that process smart contracts, transactions are executed one at a time. So usually in the order they are received. So this leads to longer processing times. However, the SUI blockchain accepts transactions in parallel, and simple operations bypass consensus, allowing them to be completed almost instantaneously. The SUI network supports smart contracts through the SUI Move language, which is an upgraded version of the Move language. So Move is a programming language based on the popular Rust language and prioritizes fast and secure transaction execution. SUI is a native token of the SUI blockchain. Tokens can be used for staking and as payment for gas fees in the SUI POS network. Nothing much, it's just like a small meeting that's going to happen, but guys, whoever has joined this community is joining Zbit community. Let me reiterate. Zbit is offering spot and futures trading. So you have the QR code to join the Telegram community. You have the QR code to download the app. You also have my registration link, which you can use to download the app and start your spot trading journey. Right now we are available in Nigeria and in India only. So like I was saying that zero point 0.6 or 0.7 are crucial points. So if the price has to retrace, it retraces from this level only. If it doesn't, then the trend is likely to reverse down. That is what it means. Let's watch it out if in case it's going to hold that 112 benchmark it has set for itself. So buying it at the price could attract a lot of, maybe the possibility of it increasing or decreasing is very risky out here. So you have to be like very, very careful in terms of whether or not at this level you should invest, because it's already at its high. If the 112 benchmark which it created previously also is also going to be maintained, then possibility is it might make a new all-time high. But if it doesn't cross that 112, then possibility is it might reach down. So if the buying pressure is not going to continue to build up, the chance and the risk of it is very, very high actually. Guys, at this stage, the prices are like really, really expensive. So you have to be very careful. If you ask me, honestly speaking, it's very expensive at the moment to kind of buy it. So guys, Zbit is offering, spot and futures trading. Use my link to register on the app and you can start trading on the platform. As you can see, today BTC is performing really well. Seems like there is good momentum and volatility that is being seen in the prices of BTC. But since crypto markets, they are very, very volatile and they basically are the chances are that they will basically either go the opportunity lies a lot, but then it's because it's very, very volatile. Only that amount which you think you can afford to lose should be invested in this particular industry, because it's a very, very risky affair, honestly speaking. So already Bitcoin at the moment is trading at its all-time high. So in this scenario we have to be like really very careful, because the resistance level, if it breaks above 112k, which it has created its all-time high, then we might see some kind of new all-time high that is getting created. Otherwise, if that resistance level is not being broken, so at the moment BTC is standing at an overvalued price. So use your NVT ratio, which is network value to transaction ratio, in order to determine if the price that you're buying at is either undervalued, fair valued, or overvalued, so that you may know that are you buying it at a good price or a bad price. Okay guys, with this I will take a 5 minutes break and I'll catch with you guys in 5 minutes. Hold on till I get back.
This way of life is not for everyone. But I would not trade it for the world.
Power will assist us in diagnosing these flaws. While the House and Senate pursue fact-finding missions to hold these responsible to account, Our mission here is to chart a path forward. We cannot allow another weekend at Biden's presidency with its glaring national security vulnerabilities papered over by an auto pen. The DC establishment might argue that the governance of a shadowy, unelected figures is a legitimate substitution for a functioning president. It is not. The American people cast their vote for a president, not a faceless apparatus. Article 2 of the Constitution vests immense authority in the President of the United States, a single individual. With that extraordinary power comes equally profound responsibility. At the Constitutional Convention, our founding fathers debated giving the President the title of Defender of the Rights of the American People. The security and well-being of the American people and their rights must take precedent over personal ambition. It is often said that power corrupts. I believe that power reveals. Over the past 4 years, this cover-up laid bare a disturbing reality. The left and the corporate media place their pursuit of power above the welfare of your families and your country. They dismissed your observations, urging you to not to trust your own eyes. We have a solemn duty to call this what it is, an abdication of constitutional duty. As was stated in Federalist 51, ambition must check ambition. If a president is mentally unfit to serve, we need a dependable mechanism to, at the very least, ensure that the truth reaches the American people. I look forward to the insights this hearing will yield and from our expert witnesses in the discussion that will follow. The public is counting on us to ensure this never happens again, because we won't always be fortunate enough to have a leader like President Trump who is so unmistakably in command. Senator Welch.
Thank you very much. Senator Cornyn indicated the view of the hearing is that there was a constitutional crisis as a result of the cover-up of President Biden's decline. I believe there is a constitutional crisis. It's the collapse of Congress asserting its Article 1 authority to make decisions about the well-being of the American people. What has this Senate debated in the months that we've been here, other than nominations? Have we discussed the possible war with Iran? Have we had a serious discussion on the floor about the massive and mounting debt? Have we had any discussion about the abdication of congressional spending authority by the impoundment actions of the administration? Have we had a discussion about climate change that is causing havoc throughout the world? What we've done is gone to the floor and haven't debated. We've gone to the floor and voted on nominations. There's another issue of great concern to me, because I have enormous respect for my colleagues. Each and every one of us who was elected, it's the highest honor of our life. Each and every one of us came here because it is in our bones that we want to try to do something beneficial and make life better for the people we represent. And we have different points of view. But instead of this Congress debating those different points of view about oil exploration, or about clean energy, about a good healthcare system, what we do is turn that debate into personal accusations of motivations, of cover-up, of conspiracy, of bad character, of demeaning folks who disagree with us. So we never get to the discussion about how do we have a healthcare system that works for the people in Texas, the people in Louisiana, and the people in Vermont. We never get to the discussion about, are we going to deny the reality of what we know is true, climate change, and how do we address that in a way that maintains a strong economy and actually builds a strong economy? We get into the accusations that if you disagree with me, you're a left-wing radical. We get into these discussions that if you disagree with me, you're a Marxist. We get into these discussions that fan the perception of the people we all represent, who desire nothing more than be able to take care of the families, live with some security, make a contribution in the communities where they live. that if a person disagrees with you, they are a bad person. We will get nowhere with that approach. Now, so many of the things that happened in the Biden administration, I totally supported, and many of you totally opposed. Those are policy disagreements. He came in with COVID. We got through COVID. We can debate about how we did it, but that was an accomplishment. The American Rescue Plan, we had the biggest jobs creation in the history of the country. The CHIPS and Science Act, acknowledging that we have to have a strong economy and be able to have the best chips here manufactured in the United States. We did that. The Federal Disaster Program improved significantly. And I can go on. And I'll take up something where we didn't do well, and that's immigration. You won that argument. But does it mean that those who disagreed with you and along the way were bad people, should be labeled Marxist, should be condemned? The American people ultimately gets to decide. But to the extent that we have a responsibility that we share, Republicans and Democrats, whichever side of the issue you're on, is to debate the issue and not debase the people who are in the debate. That's what I see as the crisis that we're facing in this Congress. Our refusal to engage in the serious discussion about the issues that are having such an impact on the people we represent. And I'm going to tell you what I think is a cover-up. I think this big, beautiful bill done by reconciliation, whereby decision of the majority, not a single member of the minority who represent half of the citizens of this country can even be in the room when the terms and the policies are being debated. We are not there. That is what I call a cover-up, because our responsibility to the people we all represent is to debate health care, is to debate our budget, is to debate about the debt that we're going to be leaving future generations. And there is no debate in what is going to be decided in the private back rooms amid discussions, not even of all the Republicans, but of some Republican leaders. That's what's going to have a lasting impact on the people every one of us represents, whether it be in Missouri, Texas, North Carolina, or Louisiana, or Vermont. We can't even do our jobs because we're not allowed to be in the room. So, sure, we can enjoy the pleasure of looking back at the Biden administration and then getting into the weeds about when and where and how the president was acting at any given moment. But I ask myself before I get into a debate and before I do anything, why am I doing it? And if I do it, does it have the potential to make things better for the people I represent? And if the answer is no, it doesn't have any opportunity to help the folks in Vermont, I just shut up. That's what I do, because it won't help. What we're doing right now won't help. It will not help. And I ask myself, why in the world are we doing it? But we know the answer to that. Because the politics that has been embraced in this Congress is the politics of accusation, of demeaning adversaries, of deflecting from engaging in the hard discussion about hard issues and trying to come to some common agreement that's going to be to the mutual benefit of all of the people that we represent. I yield back.
Thank you. We'll now introduce the witnesses. First up, from my left to right, John Harrison. John C. Harrison is the James Madison Distinguished Professor and Class of 1941 Research Professor at the University of Virginia School of Law. He's a graduate of the University of Virginia and the Yale Law School. After graduating from law school, he engaged in the private practice of law, then clerked for Judge Robert Bork on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. From 1983 to 1993, he worked at the U.S. Department of Justice, including as Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Office of Legal Counsel. He joined the law faculty at the University of Virginia in 1993. In 2008, he was on leave from the law school to serve as counselor on international law and legal advisor to the United States Department of State. His principal academic fields are structural constitutional law, administrative law, federal courts, and constitutional history. Skipping over the empty seat to Theo Wald. Theo Wald is a visiting fellow for law and technology policy at the Heritage Foundation. Wald is the former Solicitor General of Idaho. Previously, Wald served as the acting assistant attorney general in the Office of Legal Policy at the Department of Justice and deputy assistant to the president for domestic policy under President Donald Trump. Wald clerked at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit for Judge Janice Rogers Brown and the U.S. District Court for the District of Puerto Rico for Judge Jose Fuste. Wald is an intelligence officer in the United States Air Force. Wald holds degrees from Georgetown University, where he studied government and English, and from the University of St. Andrews, where he studied English literature, and a JD from the University of Notre Dame. Mr. Wald and his wife have 5 children and live in Boise, Idaho. Sean Spicer. Mr. Spicer served as the 30th White House press secretary, is the author of 4 best-selling books, and the host of the Sean Spicer Show. Mr. Spicer previously served as communications director and chief strategist of the Republican National Committee and worked for several members of Congress. He currently serves on the board of visitors of the U.S. Naval Academy, holds master's degrees from the U.S. Navy War College, and is in his 26th year of service in the U.S. Navy. Mr. Spicer is a native of Rhode Island and resides in Virginia. It is the tradition of this committee that all witnesses will be sworn in. If you please rise, I'll swear you in now. Raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. And now we'll start with you, Mr. Harrison, with your opening statement. Sure, Mike there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Smith, Senator Cornyn. The committee has asked me to discuss Congress's power to regulate the process by which the president's signature is affixed to a document other than a bimanual signature. That is to say, the use of an auto pen or similar technology. I have 4 points to make. The first is that the Constitution and the laws generally, when they require that the president act by signing a document, do not require that the president manually sign the document. The Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel wrote an opinion on that subject in 2005, which is quite extensive, and I find it persuasive. The concept of signature is signing a document is more general than, like a lot of concepts, more general than its central application. The central application is manual signature, but that's not the only way by which someone can sign a document. Someone can also sign a document by indicating that the person signing the document has decided that that person's signature should be affixed to the document by some process other than manual signature. The second point is that, as a general matter, Congress has power to carry into execution the constitutional powers of the other branches of government. The last power that is conferred on Congress by Article 1, the Section 8, is the end of what's called the Necessary and Proper Clause, and it provides that Congress shall have power, I'll read the whole clause, to make all laws which will be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, that's Congress's other powers there, in Article 1, Section 8, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. That's the last part. That's the part that's relevant here. It's sometimes called the horizontal necessary and proper clause because it operates horizontally among the 3 co-equal branches. Congress is the legislature. There are times when one of the other constitutional powers can use support that can be given only by the force of law. And that is something that Congress can do with a horizontal and necessary and proper power. The next thing I'll say is there are some principles, I think, that should govern exercises of the horizontal necessary and proper power. The first is that it operate to support, to assist, to make cause to function better, the power that is being carried into execution, be it that of the president or that of the federal courts. The second is that in supporting the other powers, Congress not seek to exercise powers that are vested elsewhere, like the power to decide cases, like the president's power of pardon. And third, when Congress exercises that power, it should make sure not to put substantial burdens on the exercise of the other powers it is seeking to support, powers that once again are vested elsewhere than in Congress by the Constitution. I think Congress can regularize the process by which the president's signature is affixed without his manual signature in a way that would be consistent with Congress's horizontal, necessary, and proper power. In particular, Congress can require that when the president indicates that his signature is to be affixed to a document without manual signature, that that decision by the president be documented and some individual record that the president has made that decision, and that be made part of the public record, say by being published in the Federal Register or the weekly compilation of presidential documents. A statute like that would carry the president's power into execution, because making sure that the president really has made a decision and that it wasn't made by someone else with the president's auto pen is a way to make sure that the power is properly exercised, that is, by the president. As long as a statute like that is completely neutral, applies the same way to all presidential decisions, it shouldn't raise any problem of Congress trying to control the president's authority. Again, constitutional powers are vested in the other branches and supported by Congress under the horizontal necessary and proper power. And third, a requirement of documentation. Well, the White House does a lot of documents. The requirement of documentation would not place a substantial additional burden on the president and the processes by which the president acts. And I would suggest that if the committee consider legislation along these lines, that it inquire into the paper flow process currently used in the White House, so that any statute Congress enacts will make that process work better rather than burdening it, making it not work as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wall.
Senator Corbyn, Senator Schmidt, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning about how the cover-up of President Biden's mental decline endangered America's national security and undermined the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution vests executive power in a single person, the president. At the founding, the president exercised the executive power through only a small group of trusted advisors and personnel. In fact, President Washington had a 4-member cabinet. Today, the president directs a Leviathan executive branch with 15 cabinet departments and at least 4 million full-time executive branch employees. The executive branch proliferation has a single source of democratic legitimacy, that by order of U.S. Constitution's Article 2, the president is both elected by the American people and vested with the executive power, all of it. Traditionally, the president takes positive actions and authenticates those actions through his signature. His signature is required for the most significant actions he may undertake. To sign an executive order, to take any action invested in him by the Constitution, as in granting a pardon, and to take the most important action of all, to sign a bill into law. In all these cases, the president's signature is itself the protection of democratic principle. When the president signs, he communicates his assent and endorsement of the action he takes. The auto pen is a device that signs the president's signature to a document. The oversight project, of which I am a board member, has discovered that the Biden White House deployed an auto pen to affix President Biden's signature to pardons, prison commutations, executive orders, and presidential proclamations. The Oversight Project's research has found that the Biden White House first deployed the auto pen to affix President Biden's signature to a proclamation on day 5 of his administration, and that there were at least 3 different auto pen signatures in use throughout President Biden's tenure in the White House. In June 2022, the Biden White House began deploying the auto pen to sign clemency warrants and executive orders. Auto pen use skyrocketed from there. We found that of the 51 clemency warrants issued during the Biden presidency, over half, 32 in total, were signed with an auto pen. And these include some of the most controversial acts of clemency of the Biden presidency, including death row commutations and the preemptive pardons of members of the Biden family, Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, and more that were issued in the final days of the Biden presidency. We reviewed President Biden's schedule in his publicly available media and were unable to find any record of President Biden's personally approving these actions, such as a statement issued by the president himself to reporters. In addition, we found that the Biden White House used the auto pen to affix President Biden's signature to clemency warrants and executive orders while the president himself was in Washington, D.C. for at least some of that day and thus was presumably available to sign important executive actions. Finally, we found multiple days where President Biden wet-signed a bill into law but used an auto pen to issue an executive order or for other important executive actions. The Biden White House's widespread use of an auto pen to affix President Biden's signatures to documents that exercise executive powers belonging solely to the president poses significant constitutional, legal, and practical considerations. Once the president's signature is copied and loaded into the auto pen, the machine can sign documents as the president himself would. To be blunt, by using the auto pen, anyone can sign documents as the president himself. Now, to be clear, I'm not here today to suggest that the auto pen is bad. It's just technology. I'm here today because of questions concerning President Biden's capacity and whether the auto pen was used to usurp presidential power or to conceal the president's decline. As the sitting president's mental acuity declined, potentially to the point of incapacitation, his administration's expansion of the powers of the presidency raises more questions than answers. Any investigation into this matter should focus not only on whether President Biden directed or authorized subordinate staff to take action in certain instances, but whether he had the capacity to do so at all. The 25th Amendment lays out clear procedures for what to do when the president is incapacitated. It was carefully drafted and informed by our nation's history. The Biden administration ignored it all to aggrandize executive power and push the country further in their preferred ideological direction. It is our obligation at this point to get to the bottom of these issues and ask the important question as to whether or not the auto pen and other devices were used to cover and obscure President Biden's mental decline, undermining our national security and also the Constitution. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning.
Right on time, pretty impressive. Thank you. Mr. Spicer.
Chairman Schmidt and Cornyn, members of the committee, thank you for having me. I was asked to share my experience as a senior White House staffer with respect to the interactions that I and other senior staff had with President Trump during his first term.
Value the differences and your team. Diversity is the secret to success at the end of the day.
Most days I would talk to him by phone or in person early in the morning and then multiple times throughout the day, including weekends. For the most senior positions in the White House, those designated by the rank of assistant to the president, which includes the White House Chief of Staff, the White House Counsel, and the Press Secretary, it is critical to have regular interaction with the president. The position of Press Secretary especially demands this type of consistent and intentional communication. I or any other Press Secretary, regardless of administration, could not do the job effectively without regular communication with the president. It was my responsibility to have the most up-to-date understanding of President Trump's position on policy, personnel, and everything in between. Admittedly, I made a couple of rather high-profile mistakes during my tenure. You may have read some of them. But in all cases, those mistakes occurred when I wasn't connected with the president's thinking or position on a particular issue or policy. Coordinating and collaborating among even the most senior staff cannot replace direct communication with the president himself. In my position, I was very well acquainted with the president's work, his day-to-day responsibilities, and his fitness for office. I watched him serve with the strength and endurance of a man half his age. As you can see on almost a daily basis through events, statements, and social media posts, he's up early and ends his days very late. Yet in several instances during his first term, the media questioned his fitness for office. Guests and so-called experts like Sanjay Gupta at CNN were called upon to speculate on the result of Trump's physical and mental well-being. The Washington Post ran hit pieces with headlines like, "The White House struggles to silence talk of Trump's mental fitness." Vox wrote, "Is Trump mentally unfit to be president?" NBC ran a story by the Associated Press that raised mental health concerns regarding the president. CNN's Brian Stelter questioned if members of the news media were, quote, tiptoeing around obvious questions about President Trump's instability. These headlines were not isolated instances. Most major news outlets ran with these ridiculous type of propaganda pieces. To use one of the media's favorite terms, these inquiries were without evidence. That brings us to the juxtaposition of how the very same media covered the Biden administration. To be blunt, the legacy media failed the American people. They failed to do their job. Many, rightly so, believe the media in this country is culpable in covering up the obvious decline of the 46th president of the United States. The scrutiny that was baselessly directed at President Trump during his first term was wholly absent from the media coverage of the Biden White House. The media lacked any sense of curiosity that would naturally stem from what the public could see with their own eyes. Even in the face of deeply concerning and public signs of President Biden's mental and physical decline, legacy media outlets were silent. Biden and his senior aides flatly dismissed the need for a cognitive test during his tenure, as had been requested of President Trump. Yet no protest was heard from the voices that were so critical of Trump. With the exception of a couple White House reporters like Fox News Channel's Peter Doocy, reporters generally refused to breach the subject at White House briefings. News outlets weren't the only ones complicit in covering up Biden's decline. Presidential staff would have or should have been interacting with Biden on a daily basis. At best, his administration was grossly negligent. At worst, Biden's staff actively concealed his fitness for office. When White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said President Biden could run circles on her, there were only two possible conclusions: that she herself was in poor health and in need of medical assistance, or that she was lying. There is no question that a vast difference between how President Trump interacted with his staff and how President Biden did. Whether one supports President Trump or not, he is clearly the most accessible and transparent president in modern history. And there is no question who is running this country. The same cannot be true said of President Biden. It is the president who is elected by the American people. The role of staff is to execute his agenda and policies. I thank the committee for holding this hearing so that going forward, the American people can have the confidence in who is running the country and making critical decisions. The American people deserve no less.
Thank you for those opening statements. The minority did not call any witnesses for today's hearing. They have chosen to ignore the hearing as they chose to ignore President Biden's mental decline, but we do have a short video of some previous statements from Biden administration officials and Democratic Party officials telling us not to believe our lying eyes. We can play the video.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with it.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
The president is focused. He's detail-oriented. He's always thinking about the big picture.
He is engaging. He is capable. He has an incredible record as president.
And I'm often with him on foreign trips. He's at the top of his game.
So he has a vision. He has knowledge. He has judgment. He has a strategic thinking.
I met with the president, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he seemed fine to me.
I have complete confidence in the president. I have watched him expertly guide meetings of staff and cabinet members. I could not have more confidence in the president.
I would just tell you that I meet frequently with the president, and every single time I meet with him, he is just fine.
But he is, again, knowledgeable, wise.
Incredibly sharp, incredibly probing, incredible command of the details.
He is sharp. He is on top of things.
There is nothing to these challenges, these suggestions that somehow He's not sharp and he's not capable.
We see Joe Biden up close. We know how attuned he is to the issue.
And you're going to see how smart he is and the experience he has.
I say his age is an asset.
He's wise.
Yes, he's wise. He has wisdom. He has experience.
And his experience, because of his age and his wisdom, has been invaluable to this country.
A lot of countries, people who've been in office a longer period of time are praised for their wisdom.
I have seen a lot of 72-year-olds not as capable as this 80-year-old.
It is hard for us to keep up with this president.
His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. He's fine. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
And this kind of sense that he's not ready for this job is just a bucket of BS that's so deep, your boots will get stuck in.
Yeah.
Okay. Professor Harrison, I do want to ask a couple questions. I just want you to presume for a moment that that a pardon was issued under President Biden's autopen signature, but issued without his direction. It comes to light that that he actually didn't direct it. A member of his staff used the autopen for a pardon. What recourse is available under those circumstances?
Well, Senator, I think there would be two questions. The first has to do with whether, and I can't answer it other than to identify the question, which is to say sometimes documents that are properly authenticated are treated as having been validly issued even when they're not. That can happen. There are legal rules that produce that result, and I don't think there is such a rule about a pardon, but I would have to inquire into that again because there are such rules. The other thing I'd say is that for a pardon particularly, the only situation I can think of that clearly would bring into question whether the pardon was valid, which was the first question, was if the government sought to prosecute someone and the person who reportedly received the pardon offered the pardon as a defense, then the government might say that no, the pardon was invalid and therefore you weren't pardoned, you're still subject to prosecution. There might be some other way for a question like that about a pardon to come up. I can't think of another, but that's the one I can think of.
So from your perspective, let's just say that if there isn't any other legal recourse other than the one that you sort of brought up, what advice would you give to this committee or this Congress, this Senate, to address that? What remedies could the legislative branch enact?
It's hard to think of anything Congress can do ex post. That's why I do think that it would be advisable ex ante to improve the process of authentication and make it more clear that documents that are signed by autopen really do reflect a decision by the president. That done in advance will make whatever the authentication system is more reliable.
Mr. Wald, given sort of the role that you played in trying to provide more transparency of what happened during the 4 years under Joe Biden, who was running the country under Joe Biden? Let's just take the last 2 years.
It's a great question, Senator, and at some level, I'm not the right witness for this hearing. I mean, there should be members of the media here, maybe some of the Senate colleagues who had known the president over the years, obviously had close proximity during the time of his administration, and obviously his staff. I think, sort of align with your previous question, there is a real consideration here on authentication. And in my time in the first Trump White House, there was an exhaustive process to determine how paper flowed into the Oval and when the president had given his assent to a certain action. That was through, in fact, two different policy channels, the staff secretary, and then there was also an office, essentially policy management, guiding the flow of documentation. If the Biden administration staffers and personnel wanted to put this to bed, they could very easily dispel all of this by saying, here are the documents that show the president assented to these actions. The Trump administration would have that. Previous administrations would have that. And if that's not there, then there is cause to improve the way that executive branch employees authenticate actions undertaken by the president.
Yeah, I mean, the order. You had, kings used to affix their seal to show that this was an official declaration from the sovereign in this country. The sovereign are the people. They delegate, the authority to their elected representatives. And as you mentioned in your opening statement, there's only one person elected by everybody. So that signature, this is not just a small point, that signature issuing a pardon for someone who'd been convicted of a crime, or in the case of Joe Biden, these preemptive pardons, which are sort of unprecedented, is a big deal. And I think that's part of the reason why we're here today. Mr. Spicer, I wanted to ask you, you alluded to this, but the media is so desperate to make sure President Trump never got back into office. Of course, you saw the lawfare that took place, but then, of course, this narrative that Joe Biden was fine, don't believe your lying eyes, until that they couldn't deny it anymore based on debate. Could you just kind of compare that to your experience when you were, press secretary for President Trump, to sort of the inquiries that were made daily about his mental acuity versus the inability to do that during the 4 years under Joe Biden?
Well, Senator, in many cases, there was no inquiry. They would just run with a story, having guests on that would question his physical or mental acuity, speculate on it, bring guests on that would speculate it. We would often then push back on those kind of stories. That's in vast contrast to the lack of any kind of curiosity that existed throughout the 4 years of President Biden. And I think the difference was they would seize on the simplest thing with President Trump, whereas in President Biden's case, there was multiple issues of physical, mental confusion, him going in the wrong direction, him falling down, him misunderstanding an event or not being able to finish the sentence. That was never the case with President Trump. They were almost manufacturing instances in his case without actually trying to get to the bottom of the story or inquire within the press office to get our response. They would go with the story, then we'd push back. With Biden, my understanding from the conversations that I would have with the media is they would never ask. They just literally were basically afraid to go there.
Senator Cornyn.
Professor Harrison, it strikes me when talking about the auto pen, there are really two issues. One is the mechanical use of an auto pen in lieu of an actual signature by the president. But it seems to me that we're confronted with more important or more fundamental issues is, did the president know that the auto pen was being used for that purpose? And so one would be if somebody stole the auto pen and was signing pardons on behalf of the president, but what we're confronted with here is really the capacity of the president of the United States to understand what he was supposed to be doing. And just thinking about other areas of the law where capacity is important, and whenever it comes to people writing a will, let's say, for example, disposing of their property to their children and grandchildren, occasionally there arises the issue of testamentary capacity by the person disposing of their property. And generally speaking, to have testamentary capacity, that person must understand they're signing a will, they comprehend the nature and the extent of their property, they recognize their relationships with potential beneficiaries, and understand how the will disposes of their assets. So why can't we have a similar inquiry into the executive capacity, let's say, of the President of the United States to actually know what he or she is doing?
Senator, you're absolutely right that question, whether the president or somebody else who holds official power has the legal capacity to exercise it, is distinct from authentication of documents. Authentication of documents is important, but capacity is another question. With respect specifically to the president, I think the answer there is, and this may be out of the frying pan into the fire kind of answer. The answer there is Article 2 and then the 25th Amendment deal with the situation in which the president is unable to exercise his powers and duties. And I think it's a reasonable inference, although the Constitution doesn't come out and say this, that a president who is not determined to be unable through now what's the 25th Amendment process for making that determination. There's no process in Article 2 itself. The 25th Amendment added something. A president who has not been, pursuant to the 25th Amendment, determined not to be able to exercise the powers and duties of the president is presumed to have capacity to do that. I say that not on the basis of any sort of, other than practice, that's the way it's been for a couple of hundred years, but I think that is a reasonable inference from the fact that the Constitution does make a provision about what happens when the president is unable, and the 25th Amendment then provides a process to determine by which the president's unable.
Mr. Wald, following up on Professor Harrison's answer, the 25th Amendment requires actions by the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president incapacitated, incapable of carrying out his or her duties. But there doesn't appear to be any accountability or any remedy when they fail to act as they did in this case. Some have suggested that there may be potential crimes committed by members of the cabinet for failing to act, basically suborning perjury, forging government documents, impersonating a federal officer, making false statements, conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of justice, wire or mail fraud. Those are all statutes, criminal statutes that are on the books. Do you think there's any application of any of those criminal statutes to the circumstances of the Biden presidency and his incapacity and the failure of those persons, only persons authorized to question that incapacity under the 25th Amendment, the failure on their part to act?
Senator, there very well could be. I mean, obviously that would be a question for a prosecutor to take up in their discretion. I will say the 25th Amendment, it's a modern contrivance, but it still is consistent with American constitutional tradition, which it assumes that officers of the United States will act virtuously and morally. And the idea that members of the cabinet would go to the length of avoiding the Oval Office so as to abdicate their responsibility to verify the appropriateness of the president's acuity or the ability to authenticate actions taken by the president. If that's not a constitutional scandal, I mean, honestly, I don't know what would constitute such. So, yeah, I mean, I think there could be the potential for crimes, but moreover, the 25th Amendment can only function in its procedural mechanisms if people are actually willing to call a spade a spade.
Senator Britt.
Thank you, and I really appreciate Senator Cornyn, Senator Schmidt calling this hearing. This is incredibly important. I mean, you look at what the administration did, you look at what the Democratic Party did, you look at what the legacy media did. It is absolutely inexcusable. It is not only dangerous, it's disgusting. And the American people deserve better. And the fact that we have none of my Democratic colleagues over here, that this entire dais is empty, that what they allowed to happen, that they are not interested in correcting it for the future is absolutely mind-blowing. And so when we're looking at what Joe Biden did while he was in office, you have a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. I mean, leaving equipment, leaving allies, changing the way the world viewed us. You look at an emboldened Russia, Iran. You look at what happened, obviously, with China and those conversations with Joe Biden. You look at millions flooding across our border. You look at a ton of unaccompanied children coming across hundreds of thousands. You look at hundreds of thousands of Americans dead because of fentanyl poisoning. You look at record high inflation. Who was in charge? And the fact that not one Democrat colleague can show up and try to get answers to that, I hope the American people see that for exactly what it is. And so my questions to you is, how do we prevent this in the future? So we know that the 25th Amendment in the 1960s, we take a look at that. Section 4 was purposefully vague to allow for some flexibility. Clearly, it either didn't work or we have some people we need to hold accountable for not stepping up. So I want to know from you all, what do we need to do? Do you think that there need to be more guardrails when it comes to Section 4? Do you think that we need some more standards to evaluate that? And if so, what should those standards be? And Professor Harrison, I'd like to start with you.
Senator, this is the question about further implementation of the Section 4 is one that has not received a lot of attention because, fortunately, the country has not needed it very often. I think that this is a situation in which Congress's power is pretty limited because the Constitution, by design, put a somewhat vague but nevertheless meaningful concept, which is ability on the part of the president
and it also means
in the hands
good
of
faith.
the political process. That's
yes, and good faith.
Yes.
And I don't think, obviously, we don't have that here. Mr. Ward, do you have any opinion on that?
Yes, Senator. So you said, should we hold folks accountable and should there be some reforms? The answer would be both. Yes. So your colleague on the Democrat side who did attend, Senator Welch, said, hey, this is just kind of retrospective. We need to move on. I would strenuously disagree with that. The only ability to move forward is if there's an accounting of what was undertaken under the Biden staff, the Biden personnel, the bureaucrats, and the cabinet. And one thing I'll just say is this very issue was debated by Republicans in 1988 in the Miller Commission report at the University of Virginia. Republicans had the open and honest, transparent discussion about the end of the Reagan presidency and whether or not there were other guardrails that needed to be imposed on the 25th Amendment. Some discussions were about the inclusion of a mental health professional on the White House medical team, whether the Surgeon General should oversee the inclusion of medical reporting as part of Section 4, Clause 4 of the 25th Amendment. All I'll say is all of those things have been set aside. There has been no legitimate discussion in the years since about how to make the 25th Amendment more robust and how it could actually operate in the instance that the president lacked capacity.
And do we need to more clearly define what unable means in the 25th Amendment?
Oh, I think most certainly, and I think there should be, the other issue, and a number of legal academics, former colleagues of Professor Harrison, have taken this up over the years. Professor Calabresi wrote about this 20 years ago, that there needs to be a more precise definition. And there are lots of issues related to succession.
There clearly does. Because, even from all of us from the outside, we're saying there is a problem. And the fact that we could get no one on the inside to actually take a look at what they already knew to exist and then be able to hold them accountable, we have to have other guardrails moving forward. And that is absolute. So we need to be talking today about what those guardrails are. I have a question. I'm running out of time. It's two things. One, senior staff. So I have been a senior staff member. You take an oath when you get to come and work in this body. You want to make sure you're doing what's best for the United States of America, for the state you serve, all of the things. Is there any way to hold senior staff accountable for either helping to cover up and or moving people to the side? Because it is clear that there are people within this administration that saw that. And they should be sitting in front of us today answering the question of why they turned their back on America, because that's exactly what they did. And so whether it's secretaries, whether it's people in the administration, or whether it is senior staff, we deserve some accountability and we deserve some answers. And then my last question will be for Mr. Spicer, legacy media. How in the world do we hold them accountable? If all of us on the outside can see it and we are saying, get to the bottom of this, but yet they refuse, what mechanisms should we put in place to be able to hold them accountable for not actually following what is clearly in front of them?
Senator, you're asking the right question. When it comes to accountability, it can't be overstated. When the Biden White House stripped 440 White House hard passes from independent journalists, they were attempting to control the narrative, to make sure that no one who wanted to hold them accountable was silenced. Part of what I think this administration has done so well is bringing in new voices, people from disparate backgrounds of all sorts, to ask the White House press secretary, to ask the senior staff, and to be able to hold them accountable. Part of it is allowing other voices in the media. We've seen what the legacy media did, but that's why I think the growth of independent media is so healthy for our democracy, and we need more of it, not less.
Thank you. And then the senior staff question, please.
Look, Senator, senior staff from the first Trump administration were brought in before committees and investigated for their participation in drafting the president's remarks on January 6th, for drafting a speech. So if there was an effort by senior staff, the Politburo, as they seem to like to have called themselves, if they were purposely distancing cabinet members, evading difficult Q&A with press, all as an attempt to conceal the president's mental acuity, yes, they should be held accountable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Moody.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn, Senator Schmidt. Appreciate you holding this important hearing. And certainly I appreciated my colleague, Senator Britt's remarks in listing out so many of the failures of the last administration as they played out. I think Americans, yes, sat horrified as they watched these events unfold, but at the core of those failures were bad policy decisions. And the truth is, you know, people talk a lot about the end of the Biden administration and his debate performance. But those of us that were involved of the repercussion and the consequences of some really bad, irresponsible, reckless, I would say dangerous policies, and were involved from day one of the Biden administration, we started questioning immediately who was making these decisions, because they were so disastrous for the security of this nation and the safety of our people. So I would say from day one of the presidency through all 4 years, this was a legitimate question, and every single failure that Senator Britt listed was the consequence of a policy decision. When I was the Florida Attorney General, one of the very first executive actions that came out undid both Republican and Democrat presidential precedents of saying, if someone is here in our country and they're here illegally and they are committing serious felonies, we are deporting them. And actual priorities were that those were the ones they went after first. And one of the very first actions that